Yo, 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 yo. A little bit of rap, I guess. See, you don't look like a rapper. Yeah, guess not. All right, so here we are for another fun-filled discussion of Marketing 301, and what we're going to look at this time is marketing research. And we're going to start out with a definition of marketing research, talk a little bit about why you might do marketing research, and then spend the majority of time going through the marketing research process. All right, so marketing research refers to the systematic design, collection, analysis, and reporting of data relevant to a situation facing an organization. You say that clears it up. So again, the systematic design, collection, analysis, and reporting of data relevant to a situation facing an organization. And the essence of marketing research is that marketing research is meant to provide information to help managers make decisions. And again, as with a couple of other things we've talked about so far, this semester, the devil there is in the details. And so again, the purpose of marketing research is to provide information to help managers make decisions. And if an organization is going to do marketing research, and if an organization is going to do marketing research well, an organization may find that marketing research is really costly and can be somewhat time consuming. And while that might seem like a bromide, what's really important about that is that, if an organization is going to spend a lot of money and spend a lot of time doing marketing research, then the organization better understand why it's doing the marketing research. Because there are just a number of instances of organizations taking a lot of time, spending a lot of money, doing marketing research, and then, literally putting the results on a shelf. And if that's what's going to happen at the end, then my argument is, why go through the whole exercise to begin with. And I have an example. It's a John Carroll related example. And back in the early 2000s, the university established a university marketing committee, and it thought that it would be a really wise idea to have a couple of marketing professors on the university marketing committee. So I was one of the people that was selected to be on the university marketing committee. And the committee came to the conclusion that it was not going to be able to do as good a job of marketing research about John Carroll as a professional firm. So we hired the university hired a reputable firm to conduct marketing research. The company's called Vivaldi. You can Google them, and you can look at some of the clients that Vivaldi has had. If you've ever seen the MasterCard Priceless commercials, for example, Vivaldi was a company that worked with MasterCard to come up with that particular theme. So the university spent a lot of money, and when I say a lot of money, somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000. So they paid Vivaldi, between $150,000 and $200,000 to conduct this marketing research study about John Carroll. And Vivaldi put together a report and presented the report to the university community, or various constituencies at the university. And at the end, a number of the higher administration people here at John Carroll decided that they didn't like what Vivaldi had found, and they put that report on, literally, they put the report on a shelf, and that report has sat there for approximately 15 years. And there's a couple of sad things about this. First of all, the university spent, between $150,000 and $200,000 that, didn't need to spend. It wasn't going to do anything with the results. Second thing is that some of the things that Vivaldi identified as shortcomings are still shortcomings, and unfortunately, in 15 years, the shortcomings have actually become more magnified. So again, this isn't to bash the university, but it's just a really good example of an organization that decided to do marketing research. It spent a lot of money, took a lot of time, and then just didn't like what the marketing research found. And again, the purpose behind marketing research is to help marketers, or to help organizations, to help managers, make decisions. All right, so let's spend some time looking at the marketing research process. And the marketing research process, following it does not guarantee success, but what kind of following the process does is it improves the chances for being successful. So again, the process doesn't guarantee success, but it improves the chances for being successful. And so there's various steps or phases, and this is how I teach it. And the first is to define the problem. And that seems simple enough until, again, the devil's in the details. And excuse me. It's really important for marketers to know whether they have identified a problem or they've identified the symptoms. And it's very similar to, you might have heard with respect to, medicine. You treat the symptoms, the problem still remains. The same thing can happen with respect to marketing research. So it's really important for an organization to identify the problem, because kind of everything, the remainder of the marketing research process starts from the identification of the problem. And if you've misidentified the problem, then everything else you do, you might do a great job with respect to, the other stages of the process. But when you get to the end, just like if you've treated the symptom with respect to an illness, the underlying problem may still remain. So to give you a more specific example, a lot of times firms will say, well, our problem is we're losing money. Well, losing money is not a problem. Losing money is a symptom, right? Because you can ask the question, well, why are you losing money? And so one of the things you want to do is, if you think you've defined a problem, ask the question why. And if you can provide an answer to the why, then you really haven't identified the problem. And so, for example, with respect to we're losing money. Well, why are you losing money? Well, you're losing money oftentimes because your revenues are less than your cost, or maybe your revenues are okay, but your costs are out of control. Well, why aren't your revenues where they should be? Why are your costs out of control? And you see kind of what's going on. We're getting, by asking the why question, we're getting closer to the true problem. So again, the first step in the process is to define the problem. Second phase in the process is to develop the research plan. And this couple of things happen here. And first is, what kind of data are we going to need to address the problem that we've identified? And then, how are we going to collect the data that we need and that was identified in to address the problem that we identified in the first phase. So we've defined a problem, we've developed a research plan, and then we now are going to collect data. And there's two primary types of data. There are what's known as secondary data, and there are primary data. And secondary data refers to data that already exists. It's data that's been collected for some other purpose. Primary data is data, or refers to data that are collected specifically to address the problem at hand. And so, the wise market researcher will start with secondary data, because Secondary data, in some cases, might be sufficient to address the problem that was that you posed in the define the problem phase, and there are a couple of types of secondary data. There's internal secondary data, which refers to data that are internal to a firm. And that's data that should be readily available. So, for example, if you think about Pizzazz, I'm supposing a number of you have been to Pizzazz, the restaurant that's near John Carroll on the Circle there. Their internal data would be things like, the number of customers that are served in a particular day, the number of employees they have, what they pay the employees, how many pizzas are sold in the week, how many calzones are sold in the week, things of that nature. That would be internal secondary data. There's also external secondary data, and external secondary data simply are secondary data that are outside of a firm. And there's two types of external secondary data. There's what's known as public secondary data, which you don't have to pay for. So a really good example of that is the data that's collected by the U.S. government. I mean, you're probably familiar with the U.S. Census. It's done once a decade, done every 10 years, and the U.S. government collects a lot of data about about the people that live in the United States, and a lot of that data could be very helpful from a marketing perspective. So that's public because you don't have to pay for it. There's also what's known as proprietary secondary data. That's external secondary data that in order to get it, you, the organization, are going to have to pay for it. So there are companies that have taken some of the UN census data and taken some other things and refined it even further and can give marketers a really detailed view of particular segments in a particular zip code. But the only way you get that is the only way you get that kind of information is you have to pay for it. And again, the important thing about secondary data is that secondary data already exists, and in most cases you can access secondary data, you can get the secondary data relatively quickly, and if it's not free, it's nowhere near generally as expensive as conducting primary research. And so again, the primary data or primary research refers to data or research specifically collected to address the problem at hand. So if you've done your evaluation of the secondary data and you go, this isn't going to do it, all right, well then you need to conduct primary data. And there are different ways to collect primary data, and unfortunately, sometimes the way that would get you the best data isn't practical. And I like to use this example, and I have a lot of fun with it when we do it in a face-to-face classroom. But if you're a Procter & Gamble, and Procter & Gamble makes a lot of consumer goods, and it has a lot of shampoos and things of that nature. And if you're Procter & Gamble, you would really like to know how people shampoo their hair. And so, for example, how much shampoo do you use when you shampoo your hair? Right now, probably the best way to collect that data would be some sort of observation. You think you're catching on, right? Do you want somebody in the shower with you? Do you want a webcam in your shower to see how you use shampoo? And so again, kind of the way that you collect the data, you might, there might be kind of a quote-unquote the ideal way. Sometimes you have to settle, and so what Procter & Gamble might have to do is it might have to ask you, it might have to conduct a survey of some sort to collect the data from you. The things with surveys is that sometimes people overestimate, sometimes people will underestimate, sometimes people just will guess, right? Like in particular with something like shampooing your hair. I mean, how many people really think a lot or deeply about how you shampoo your hair? So we've actually talked about a couple of ways to collect primary data. There's the observation method, there's surveys. Primary data can also be collected through experiments. The Facebook discussion that we talked about with respect to ethics in that article, that's an example of collecting marketing research data through experiments. Experimental data isn't used as much in marketing research as it would be in the sciences. And a lot of that is due to some of the ethical issues that we talked about in the previous discussion. So giving you a quick and dirty overview of data collection, and once we have the data, what we then need to do is analyze and interpret the data. And this is where statistics and all sorts of fun stuff like that come in. But a key thing is to keep in mind is that in order to do certain kinds of statistical tests, you need the proper kind of data. So when you're thinking about the data that you're collecting, you need to know kind of the limitations of the data that you're collecting. So you might remember from statistics, there's 4 basic kinds of data. There's nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio level data. You can't do a whole lot with nominal data in terms of statistical types of techniques. Ratio level data gives you I think the most flexibility in terms of doing statistical stuff, but ratio data, sometimes is a lot more difficult to collect than sort of nominal data. And so the type of data is going to kind of dictate how you analyze the data. Are you just going to be able to do basic statistics like mean, mode, medians, and things like that? Or are you going to be able to do some a little more advanced statistical analysis, like maybe analysis of variance? Are you going to be able to use multivariate techniques like multiple regression or factor analysis? Are you going to be able to look at either correlation, which tends to be the multiple regression in the ANOVA, or you can be able to look at causation, which is the path analysis or structural equation modeling. So there's a lot of different issues that crop up with respect to analyzing and interpreting the data. And so what we've done so far is we've defined the problem, we've developed a research plan, we've talked about data collection, we've talked about analyzing and interpreting the data, and the final step in the process, final phase in the process is to write the report and implement the findings. I'm going to talk more about writing the report. It's really important, and I have a really good example. Well, I think it's a really good example. It's an example I've used for 30 years now, of just the researchers not understanding who was going to be reading and then using the report. And so it's really important to understand which audience or audiences are going to be exposed to the report that you're writing, because you want to write in a language that they can understand. So a number of years ago, when I was a doctoral student at the University of Maryland, a trucking company that was located in the state of Maryland came to the College of Business at Maryland. It's now it's now a name school, but it was the College of Business and Management. And they wanted us to do a study to help them figure out where they should put their truck terminals. And so we used a lot of secondary data. We built some really complex regression models. We wrote the report, and the report was going to, the CEO and the vice president of marketing and vice president of sales and vice president of operations. This is going to truckers, and there's nothing wrong with truckers. I worked in the trucking industry, right? But truckers aren't academics, and unfortunately, the report that we wrote, right, was written as if it were going to be submitted to an academic journal. So we're doing all sorts of stuff about t-test, and the r-squared and the f ratio, and we did stepwise multiple. These people had no clue, right? The report was totally wrong, and even more importantly, and this is really key, the report that we wrote, it didn't address the problem that they had hired us to do in the first place. They want to know where to put truck terminals. Should you put them in Roanoke, Virginia? Should you put it in Richmond, Virginia? Should you put it in Charlottesville, Virginia? Right? We never really addressed that. And so it's really important when you write the report. Who's your audience, and does the report address the reason that you were hired to do the research in the first place? I keep on going longer and longer with these things. Bye for now.